Welcome to This Week in Health IT Influence, where we discuss the influence of technology on health with the people who are making it happen. My name is Bill Russell, Healthcare CIO Coach and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcasts, videos, and collaboration events dedicated to developing the next generation of health leaders. We have a few more channel sponsors who have chosen to invest in our show and invest in our mission. And I'm going to highlight one for each new episode over the next couple of weeks. Having dealt with a ton of companies around healthcare IT staffing, I found ProTalent Advisors' approach to be refreshing. Some of the things that I liked is that they are dedicated to healthcare. They understand the world that we live in. They're lean and nimble. They don't get bogged down where other firms do. They're entrepreneurial. They're creative, flexible, and willing to explore win-win scenarios. They're a high integrity firm. Everything is above board. They tell you what they can and can't do when you start. And I guess I would add to that list that they are dedicated to investing in the next generation of health leaders, as evidenced by their sponsorship of this show. And I want to thank ProTalent Advisors and the rest of our channel sponsors who continue to make this content possible. Now, on to the show. Hope you enjoy. Today, I'm joined by Chris Harper, Vice President of Health Information Technology at the University of Kansas Health System. Good morning, Chris, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a second time. I've done 152 episodes, and the on-site ones are always a challenge. And you are the second one that I just completely lost. I mean, unless people want to listen to a podcast of a barista, a piano in a lobby, and some people hanging out at the elevator, because that audio came through a lot louder than our audio. So thanks for doing this again.
Well, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one that got lost, so sounds good.
Yeah, it's just par for the course. I see now at some of these conferences, you'll go and you'll see these people with big production crews. Our conferences have gotten pretty well followed, and people doing different videos and stuff. And those of you who saw me at Chime, and I saw you at Chime, and you know that I just used 2 iPhones and a couple of mics. And so since our show, I've upgraded all my equipment just so that'll never happen again, hopefully.
You're going away from the high cost or low cost care? Is that where it's going?
No, actually, I got an app on my phone which drowns out the background noise. And it's amazing what you can do on these phones these days. Of course, they're not cheap devices anymore, but it is pretty amazing. All right, so let's get right to it. So tell us about University of Kansas Medical Center and your role specifically.
Yeah, so I guess I joined KU Health System about 7 years ago, and my initial ask or my mission really was to apply some of the things I learned in different industry. How do we apply data and analytics really drive better outcome for the patients? And really, we try to do the triple aim, and now what we call the quadruple aim, which is improve quality, improve access, do it at a lower cost, and keep your providers happy using your system. So those are kind of the things that we worked on. And so we started that journey about 7 years ago. But interestingly enough, my recent role, one thing that we recognized is today you can't really split your data and analytics strategy from your application strategy. And so as part of the combined role that I have honor of serving as, we try to make sure not only the right technology and the right application, the workflows identified, but also the data that are going in are coming back out as a valuable insights that our clinicians or administrators or whoever needs that access to the information can act on it. So now I'm responsible for both the back-end data and analytics and the front-end applications.
So you started in the analytics role, established the analytics practice and program, and then recently, about 6 months ago or so, moved into the application?
July, so more than 6 months now.
Okay. How's that transition?
It's been good, actually. So my former role, I used to manage software development, and I used to lead a small agile team that develop a lot of custom development applications. And so we, work for companies like, Sanofi Aventis, Pfizer, and consulting and developing software to support their sales efforts and different type of engagement efforts. And so I feel comfortable with the additional responsibilities. It does make sense now, and how a lot of different systems need to come together to kind of drive that mission of that quadruple aim. And so I was glad to take on, and luckily we had an amazing team already established. So it was really an easy lift for me. But really right now, what we're trying to figure out is how do you not only use the data more effectively, but how do you gain efficiency out of it? And so we're applying a lot of different strategies, whether it's automation or different alignment of how our teams are aligned. So we're doing more of the agile methodology within our Epic environment as well. So we're applying a lot of different analytics and software development methodology to improve how we're delivering our services.
Yeah, so when we first met, a colleague put us in touch. I was doing some work for a client, and it was around Health Catalyst. And you guys brought Health Catalyst in as part of your program early on. So actually, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up talking really strategy, architecture, operations, and innovation around the data and analytics program. And that's where we're going to sort of camp out, because what I've found as I go out into the industry is that there's a lot of health systems are still struggling with some of the things that you and I have talked about, and you and I talked about on that initial call. So actually, walk us through the process of standing up the data analytics program. So a walk through memory lane, go all the way back, 6+ years, and walk us through the process of standing that up at the medical center.
No, happy to do so. And so if I go back 7 years ago, it was October 2012, and really when I first came in, the first thing that I always do as a leader trying to establish a new strategy is really understand where we're at and what do we need. And so I did about three months engagement, speaking with a lot of the physicians and physician leaders and our executives throughout their health system, and trying to get a gauge of how mature are we in using data as a strategic asset to really drive whether it's your profitability, profit margins, better outcome, better research, what have you. And so I did about data collection and analysis of our current capability and maturity. And so typically I like to try to have a framework around that show not only opportunities to improve, but also where you're at as you go, because every organization starts at a different place. And so after I did about 3 months of exercise of collecting and understanding where we need to go, I initially asked to form a data governance group to be able to start helping me and the organization make the right decisions around our data journey. And so I remember, my CIO at the time told me that great idea, but probably something that we don't want to do. To be honest, later on he told me he thought it was the dumbest idea, but he came around and basically, what ended up really getting us going is, as I'm doing my assessment and understanding, I said, you know what? There's going to be coming a time that if we don't do this and have a really a group that governs our information and data, we're going to come into a place where we're not going to have a synced up information or metrics. And so what I used at the time is I used to kind of tell like, hey, watch out for this thing that could be coming. And really, I think it's Churchill who said, don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Right. And
so what happened was, our organization was on the old SMS revenue cycle system for 28 years. And that fall, we were going live with our revenue cycle with Epic. And so I kind of made a prediction that if we don't really align our metrics, the data, the sources systems, and all of the things that typically come with your data governance and EDW, that we're going to come to a place where our data is really not going to make a whole lot of sense. And so typically that happens after about 3 months after you switch over systems. And so my prediction came true when there was a board meeting. After 3 months, we went live with our revenue cycle. And because we have different reporting groups, reporting on different things, but using the same metrics, our CFO and COO kind of presented same metrics, but with a little bit of different numbers. And so that's where, I got a call that night after the board meeting saying, hey, you know that thing that you talked about, maybe doing data governance? Maybe we need to get that going. And so I got the thumbs up on getting that going. And really, that's the genesis of our strategy, because as a technologist, I'm probably not the best person to really, to set out the strategy, but also really drive towards this. What I need is a coalition of the willing, so to speak, to be able to bring the group together and making decisions together. And so right after we got our data governance going, understood where our current state is, and then we laid out our opportunities to improve. So I used a 3-year roadmap to be able to highlight whether it was a technology need, whether it was the capability needs from data literacy programs or different things that we need to have in our organization. We used that roadmap and got the blessing from the data governance group to be able to lay out that strategy. And one of the key things that that we needed was, as part of my assessment, one of the things that I looked at is, at that time we had about 8+ different reporting groups, 12 different source systems that we were reporting off of. But the big chunk was we had 60,000 access databases that acted as a quote unquote data warehouse for the organization. And so it was not a sustainable model. And so one of the things I partnered with one of the reporting groups is to be able to measure not only their demand of all the data and reporting requests, but also the throughput and where they're spending most of their time. And quickly what we realized is there were a ton of opportunities around how we not only collect the data, but how do we report off of it. So if you have a typical reporting individual, as requests are coming in, they're spending around 30% of their time hunting and gathering data, trying to normalize it, put it into this access database form, because we didn't have a system-wide, whether it's a SQL environment or different things, to be able to provide that data normalization. So they used access databases. Well, so if you look at the demand at the time, roughly it was about 11 to 12% year over year that the demand was growing. And only way to really meet that challenge for the health system as we're growing was just hire more people. And I quickly showed using the data to say, hey, that's probably not the best strategy, because year one, we have to hire 2 people. Soon after that, we're going to have to hire more and more and more. But we're going to be, repeating the same process and getting the same value out of it that we're having issues with. And so as part of the data governance journey, we did a commission study to look at what type of a data warehouse capability that we wanted to go after. And so, everybody knows at that time, Epic had their own capability around their data warehousing solution. And so we compared what was there and where we're at and what the marketplace had. And one of the things that I've always done as a analytics leader is, I don't want to spend a dime of our organizational money on something that adds no value. So one of the key things that we focused on was the time to value. So if I start spending the money and standing up this EDW, we wanted to make sure we could have actionable outcomes and improvements showing within the first 6 to 12 months. And so that was one of the things that we looked for. And when we looked at that time, the marketplace, not only the vendor who knew how to do improvement, whether it's care or cost, we both needed not only the expertise, but also the technical capabilities. And so when I looked at the marketplace, Health Catalyst, as the vendor that we ended up going with, had not only the people and the experience and the knowledge, but also had the technical alignment that we were looking for. And so it was after a vendor selection, we went with Health Catalyst on their care variation improvement program, and also standing up their EDW platform. And I would say the key thing that aligned with their organization, not just the technology, but ours, is really that culture of improvement that really resonated throughout their organization and their technology as well. So it was an easy match. And so,
And that was about 4 years ago, or how long ago was that?
so we I believe started that project in 2014, so about 5 years ago now.
Okay. All right. And all right. So you've given us a lot to go off of, and I'm gonna end up asking questions around strategy, architecture, operations, and really around innovation around this program. But it's a couple things just jump out at me. One is you did your own back in 2012. You did your own process for evaluating the system. I know that HIMSS has their framework now. If somebody were starting this off today, is that the direction you would point them? The HIMSS framework for evaluation?
I think the HIMSS framework is good. I believe at that time I used the advisory board, had a pretty good framework around the maturity model. And the reason that resonated with me is really, at KU, our organization was already very savvy about using data to make good decisions. So we had a very data-driven culture that was an easy opportunity for us. And so what advisory board framework did is really kind of had different capabilities, whether it's the data literacy, whether it's the technology alignment from a BI perspective, what have you. So that really resonated with where we were at. And so that's how we adopted it. I think the HIMSS model is very broad, maybe a little broader than what we needed at the time. And so we used the advisory board and we modified it for our own internal usage. So it's not exactly as how advisory board drew it up, but we used the kind of the model that went down to probably the next layer of details, more than what HIMSS analytics maturity provided.
We'll get back to our show in just a minute. 3 industry leaders came together and decided to create a firm that brings wisdom to healthcare organizations when you need it most. Starbridge Advisors has aggregated and vetted industry veterans in the areas of digital strategy roadmap development, data and information governance, CMIO-directed clinical governance and optimization, major project go-live readiness assessment, and cybersecurity assessment and program development, among other areas. They bring practical, unbiased, open, and plain-spoken advisory services. Their recommendations are based on real-world experience as healthcare executives, and they always put their clients' interests first. Their advisors have very diverse experiences and have spent the bulk of their careers in the provider space. They come in, partner with you and your team, get the job done, and let the work speak for itself. If you find yourself with a project that just needs to go well and you want been there, done that experience and expertise, take a look at Starbridge Advisors at starbridgeadvisors.com. I personally want to thank Starbridge for becoming a channel sponsor of This Week in Health IT and investing in developing the next generation of health IT leaders. Now, back to our show. You seem to be communicating that each organization's culture and data needs and maybe even systems and governance is a little different. So you almost have to spend that time digging into all those elements to make sure that you're identifying the right program. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing for healthcare. Am I hearing you correct?
Yep, that's correct. And then you also have to look back and evaluate that every year, right? So we essentially developed this 3-year roadmap to kind of guide us where we need to go, whether it's with funding, with additional opportunities. When I started that journey, quality and safety obviously is our number one focus, and so. But at the same time, we had opportunities to look at our improvement effort with cost opportunities. And so, what I typically do is, since it's easy to count with your one hand, I look at 5 different opportunities or questions you're trying to address using data, and really spending most of your time understanding not only where you're starting from, a culture, technology, the people, and all of that, but also are the 5 most important things that your senior executives or your physicians are looking for, and really focusing on that to really understand where your starting point is. And then really, if you wait, a year or two to get value out of it, you've already lost the battle, right? So you've already got funding for maybe supporting it for 12 months, but if you're not showing your incremental value and how you're using this really resource to improve outcome, you're not going to really get that next year of funding. So really, we looked at what are some of the 5 questions, and then quick wins we can have. And so to use an example, at that time, our heart failure readmission rate was pretty bad. So we were around like 22.8, right around there. But we had a young physician that we just hired to help drive that program, and then they've already had a established kind of a care improvement group that was starting to dive in. And so that was an easy marriage for me to work with that group and trying to help them improve their 30-day heart failure readmission and really bring the missing pieces that they needed, which was the technology and the data. And so, yeah, we quickly partnered with our physician champion and nurse champion, since they already are focused on improving from a change management perspective and care delivery. Within the first, 6 months, we got the environment stood up, really hyper-focused on it, developed what we call our analytics applications. So they have the data at their fingertips that they defined they needed. And once we got that going, it was an easy lift for us, but we had a clinical partner that was really willing to help. And so after about 12 months of actually having the analytics application and the tool and the care team to really use that to improve, we went from 22.8% down to about 18.5%. And so that was a tremendous improvement within the first 12 months. And then when we back and measure, what was the cost opportunity, not only, better care for our patients, but also what was the opportunity from a cost savings? Really, it was about $800,000 cost reduction opportunity that we saw. And so that was an easy thing for us to really hang our hat on. So really, within that program and a couple of others, we already pay for the investment we've made in our EDW structure.
Yep. So a lot of our users like to ask me questions around, or want me to ask questions around budgeting. So you sort of described the initial sort of foray into this was, at a board meeting, they're looking at different numbers, which is more common than I think people care to acknowledge. The data definitions within organizations is a challenge. So that's sort of an impetus for, hey, get moving. Now, did they throw $20 million at you and say, make it happen? Or did they say, here's a little tranche of money, figure out what you can do around analytics, and then you had to justify it at every stage kind of thing?
So it was more the latter, but little less painful. So way we built out our budgeting is, what will it take to get us going? And luckily, we had a vendor who was willing to partner with us in kind of structuring the contract in a way that allowed us to really kind of quote unquote pilot and test drive the capabilities. And so we initially structured it in a way that, within 6 months and 12 months of getting the project kicked off, how do we budget for those pieces? And then once I was able to show how, whether it's, revenue generation or cost reduction or quality improvement, I always partner with our CFO and the financial team to have a way to measure that out from a cost perspective, and then showed, the value that we were adding once we went live. And so, and we make sure that the data governance group, through that venue, that people are aware of the value we're adding. And then so to ask for that next year's funding after you got that going, and once you can show what the value that you're bringing, it was an easy sell. So then we, rather than go on year after year, then we built out a kind of a multi-year budgeting to be able to kind of grow the capability. And then the other thing I did is we not only from maturity, but also tier stepped our investment strategy as well. So typically, really where you want to invest at year one is getting the foundational pieces in place. So we call that the operational reporting investment. So that's where you have your not only EDW, but your data visualization tool and the data management and kind of the business intelligence teams to be able to use that information to develop these, whether it's dashboards or reports or whatever. And so we really hyper focused on that investment to get the operational and foundational technology pieces paid off that first year and year and a half. And then we started to get into some of the other fancier, more sexier side of the data with, predictive and advanced and analytics. Because the other thing with that we always hear is, when we get our analytics strategy going, they're like, okay, when can we do some of these other stuff? Like, people always talk about, big data or AI or machine learning or natural. So they talk about those things, but don't understand that it takes upfront investment from getting the foundation built before you can really make an impact in those advanced analytics techniques. And so we had it's almost a 5-year program so we're kind of at the tail end of that now where, so we invested into the operational reporting foundation. So that really solidified, I would say about 80% of our data and reporting needs. And so we can service our organization from that capability. And then we started to build in our predictive and advanced analytics layers on top of that. And so it took a little, I would say, a pivot as part of my role as well, too, where I partner with, we have a group internally called Lean Promotion Office, led by one of our physicians, where that group is using the Lean Six Sigma methodology, Lean Toyota management system to be able to do process improvements, incremental improvements. And so once we got to a stage where we were ready to kind of really do the advanced analytic capability, I partner with that group. Since again, I'm more focused on the technology strategy and the data management strategy and the IT component of it. I always look for a champion who can really partner with me in this journey. And so, back 5 years ago, partnering with some of the physician champions driving the care variation. Today, I have a lean improvement group that I partner with to be able to really, use the information technology that we're putting together, and for them to use that to drive the most important things that are happening in the organization.
So you guys have really, you've come a long way. But all these programs are touch and go in the beginning, and you advocate quick wins. Which wins did you target, and which ones panned out, and which ones maybe, either took too long to pan out, or so which were good quick wins to shoot for, and which ones didn't really pan out for you?
So again, every organization is a little different in their need, but we're hyper focused on patient satisfaction and quality, and so the 5 initial things that we tried to improve on as a quick win was patient satisfaction dashboard is kind of what ended up being. But so we are hyper focused on understanding what our patient needs are through that Press Ganey opportunity. And so, but it was such a cumbersome effort to collect that data and send it out every, I believe it's every month, or now I think we've gotten better than every month, but we send out this 400-page PDF to every provider and every, nurse managers and so forth. And then they have to kind of really thumb through that PDF to understand where their patient satisfaction was. And it was a static data, so they could look at it and get additional granular information, but they have to actually go somewhere else to be able to get additional information if they have additional questions. And so we really focused on that because we knew that was not only manually intensive to produce that report, but also on the consumption side of really adding value. I think people were using it, but using it differently, and really it wasn't able to answer a lot of the questions that they probably have. So if, for instance, if their patient satisfaction is going down in certain, things like nurse communication, like they have a lot more questions about, okay, what do I need to do about that? Well, so what we focused on as one of the quick wins was, let's get that data into our EDW environment, develop a self-service tool that could be more comprehensive, and set it up in a way that as your typical nurse manager might have questions about their unit on their patient satisfaction, we served up different components of the data to be able to answer those questions for them. And so that added a quick win and quick value. So, getting the data in, developing these analytics tools to be able to help answer those questions. And then mentioned about the heart failure one, again, we're focused on the outcome and quality improvement. So there were things that we looked there. Sepsis was the other one that we were able to get it up rather quickly and start really iterating. And that's the other component is whatever you develop, it's not going to be perfect the first time. So you have to apply that agile methodology. And so, so we do just like a software development effort, we do releases every 2 to 4 weeks so that, if this patient satisfaction application, analytics application was stood up, it doesn't have everything that everybody needs right away. So then we commit to having optimization and enhancements every 2 to 4 weeks so that the users, when they ask for something that, they might not have it today, but they might get it in, the next release or maybe release after that.
Sorry, I keep muting because the guy across the street decided to trim his trees right now with the chainsaw. So just seems to be no one wants us to record. So how did you measure it at first? And has that changed in terms of how you measure the effectiveness of your program over time?
So I think we always try to add value. So we always try to measure in terms of opportunities and savings. So we always measure, we invested this much into it. Are we getting the value out of it? So we measure from a kind of an ROI type of assumption. Again, if you talk to any organization who does an ROI model for their data analytics, it's never 100%, meaning that CFOs will always ask, well, did it actually take dollar out of my bottom line by investing this? Well, it's never exact science, right? So meaning, it's just a technology investment and people investment, but ultimately it's how you use the information to drive change and progress. And that's where today, one of the things that I really appreciate partnership with our lean team is that they do kind of a 3-to-1 investment return. So they have to show 3 times the savings or improvements to be able to ask for another, $1 or an FTE or so forth. So they really help us to measure some of those progress and the value that we're bringing. And the hard thing is getting over that initial big capital investment hump, because once you get over that, your ROI gets a lot easier. But yeah, that for a lot of organizations, that's where they get really hung up on is, man, I got to invest this, 6, 7, 8 figure investment up front to get the value out of it, whether it's, 3-year return, 5-year return. But, really you got to look at it as a long-term strategy versus, every year return kind of a thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, in the last 5 minutes, we hit strategy, we hit operations. I want to talk architecture and, architecture and innovation. So from an architecture standpoint, you chose to stand up Health Catalyst, and that's a point in time decision. There's probably factors involved there, but you're also utilizing other platforms as well, like Epic for operational reporting as well. Walk us through, how you think about platforms within the data analytics in terms of the strategy and the architecture. How do you think about different systems and how they fit into the overall framework?
No, that's a great question. And my background actually is before I came to KU was really driving kind of the architecture and what we called a capability modeling components to be able to really put together a strategy, whether it's your analytic strategy or whether it's your digital strategy or Epic strategy. And so my background is then to be able to kind of develop this framing of people, process, technology to really identify the need in the strategy. And so from our overall data analytics from a architecture perspective is, the simple question I asked is, do we want as an organization, have ultimate control of our data? If we truly believe data is our strategic asset, I think there's some Economist magazine identified, like I think last year or 2 years ago, that today data is more valuable than oil. And so, so the simple question I asked for our data governance and our senior executive is, do we truly believe in that data ultimately is our most strategic asset? how do we want to invest into that? Meaning, do we want to hang our hat on then? At that time, we had an opportunity to invest into whether it's Epic version or the others. And the answer was no, meaning that we wanted to have ultimate control over our data destiny. And so our architecture really lays out, when we started, Health Catalyst had the right from a capability perspective to really get us going where we need it. But quickly we realized there are things that Health Catalyst is not good at or doesn't even do. So for instance, we had an internal organizational need around doing a better job of recruitment. So we were building a new hospital tower. And one of the things we needed right away is there's no way that we were going to be able to hire people fast enough to support this new tower that's going up. And so through the data governance, one of the requests that came in is, hey, can we use the data and our analytic capability to improve our speed of recruitment and the quality of recruitment? And so I partnered with our HR team to be able to stand that up. But Health Catalyst doesn't offer anything around that. And so when we initially structure our relationship with Health Catalyst, we had the ability. So from a platform perspective, we built it on our Microsoft SQL because we knew that internally we had a tremendous support from our infrastructure team who are well skilled in Microsoft products, but also we had a lot of skills that are wrapped around that. And so from a technology platform perspective, we partnered with Microsoft quite heavily and then started to invest into that multi-year strategy. And so Health Catalyst is really what I considered a sister EDW environment. We have our internal one that's on the same platform, but has a different mission that it serves. And then same thing on the research side. So right now we're talking about how do we do additional research using the same platform approach. So we have a consistency around our technology infrastructure, but we can spin up another kind of a sister EDW that's really focused on different types of research. And on top of that is where now you have opportunities. So I use what's called a service bus model, something I learned as a software guy a while back, where all of that's great, but you have to have a cohesive data management strategy in order to be able to align all the data and that's coming in and out of your analytics platform. So I've been applying a lot of those architectural methodology to really, at the end of the day, it's not just this one thing that Health Catalyst provides, but also the additional needs organization have, and that also marries in obviously the Epic capabilities as well. So today we haven't had the need to invest into the caboodle strategy yet, but I always tell our organization that it's not if but when we need to invest into that, because there will be a need or a business case or a use case that will say, hey, here's what I need, and here's the value that it'll generate out of our Epic caboodle strategy. So today we haven't had the need because we've been able to service all the needs through our other existing platform, but I think quickly we're going to show that we're going to have to invest into the Epic's caboodle strategy as well, coming soon.
Yeah. So in the last couple of minutes here, let's hit on innovation real quick. Where's innovation going to come? I mean, there's obviously incremental innovation that you're looking at, but where will innovation come in the area of data and analytics, or what are you keeping an eye on right now?
Oh boy, that's a tough question. I think if I step out of our healthcare for a second and look at where technology in general have come and it's going. So I remember, having done this, back in early, 2000 and 2002 with my analytics career. Really back then, it was all about horsepower computing, costs of storing data. Because back then, spinning up a server or a data environment was hugely expensive. So most of your dollar went into trying to have a really good strategy with your infrastructure, whether, so back then we partnered with organizations like Teradata, Informatica to really help us to kind of build that capability out. Today, a lot of it is really commoditized. So whether it's, AWS from Amazon or Microsoft Azure, there's a way to get around the infrastructure capability challenging, because the innovation has came so far in the server and storage and all of that, even how you visualize data whether, one thing that ClickView was really was good at is they have an in-memory capability to be able to quickly go through the logics that you develop when you develop a dashboard. And back then, like nobody else had that kind of capability. So they were really taking the market by the corner and really driving the data visualization capability. What I'm focusing on now is all of those things have became pretty much, standard functionality or commoditized from storage and server and computing power. What I'm really keen on is there's so much information and data that really, how do you apply your machine learning and AI is where I'm really hyper focused on. So you hear all of these partnerships that are happening now, whether it's, between Google and Cleveland Clinic, or, there's a lot of organizations really trying to take benefit of these AI and machine learning capability. I think the winner hasn't been really been clearly defined, and so what I'm doing is just kind of watching and seeing what opportunities there are. We are also applying some of the automation into our strategy. So for instance, once I was responsible for our EMR and Epic, that I knew I had to apply some automated way versus just keep hiring more people to do some of the manual work. And so the key area that came up was our testing. So we actually integrated and implemented automated testing with our Epic capabilities, and that's shown tremendous ROI within the first 5 months. That's kind of where I think I'm really focused on is from a data analytics perspective, what are some of the machine learning and artificial intelligence that can really help you automate, but also help you focus? Because right now there's so much data, but really a lot of it isn't really actionable. So if there's a way we can actually innovate using some of those capabilities with ML and AI, that's where we can really make advancement and innovation in healthcare.
Fantastic. Well, we're close to the end of our time. I love is that a floor to ceiling whiteboard in the back?
Oh, it is, yeah. So, hopefully, I don't know if you can't read that, but that's kind of our so we try to convert all of our office space into multi-use functions. So I open it up in a way that, because the like most health systems or hospitals, square footage is valuable resource as well.
Yep.
And so if you have, so we converted all the offices into having a whiteboardable wall or a whiteboard space. And then if my teams need, have a meeting with less than 4 people, they can use my office as part of that as well.
Yeah, I made this mistake. I actually did that, and I couldn't reach above like 6 foot because I'm not that tall. But I had a guy on my team who was 6'8", so he always took the top sections.
Nice. No, that's smart.
Great. So, Chris, thanks for coming back on the show. I really appreciate it. Is there any way people can follow you? Social media, LinkedIn?
You know what? I don't do enough of social media. I am more of maybe kind of an old school as a technology guy. It's kind of interesting, but if anybody wants to contact or reach out, happy to work with them. But yeah, so I mean, I think on my LinkedIn, I do have a public profile, and if they want to shoot me a message, happy to have a conversation. But I don't I guess post anything because I'm just kind of focused on the work I'm doing here. But happy to connect with people.
Well, I love it, and I appreciate you took my call a while back and helped me out with a client project that I was doing, and really helpful. I mean, just the amount of experience you've gained over those 6 or so years of implementing that program there is really, I think, valuable to the industry, and I appreciate you coming on the show to share it.
Yeah, no, happy to do it, and thanks for having me, Bill.
Special thanks to our channel sponsors, VMware, Galen Healthcare, Starbridge Advisors, and ProTalent Advisors for choosing to invest in developing the next generation of health leaders. Please come back every Friday for more great interviews with influencers, and don't forget, every Tuesday, we take a look at the news which is impacting health IT. This show is a production of This Week in Health IT. For more great content, you check out our website, thisweekhealth.com, or the YouTube channel. If you find the show valuable, there is one thing you can do to help support the show, and that is share it with a peer. Send an email to them right now with a link to the page and say, here's a show that I get a lot of value out of. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.